Well, here we go then. And we thought we'd start this off by entering a new world, the new world of model railways, the only one that some of us or all of us will be allowed to partake of in the future. So from here on in, it's model railways all the way. Hang on, let me stop this. The others are here. I won't be able to stop this now. Started it like this. All right, there we are. They were all here after all. Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. The reason I think I say things are getting a bit blah is so DJI are getting rid of the Mavic 3. There we are, end of life, game over. Boom. But blah. And also they're introducing the Integra goggles, also blah. I'm afraid I find it very hard to get excited about.
I've lost my party popper. Oh dear.
Yeah.
How long's the Mavic 3 been out for? It didn't feel that long to me, unless I've not been keeping track of time.
I don't know, a couple of years.
That's the trouble when you get older, you lose track of time.
Is that train less than 250 grams? That's the best question so far. Exactly. Does it have remote ID? And I believe that the new DJI goggles will have a GPS built in and be RID compliant in themselves. So that's
handy if you get Alzheimer's. You'll never get lost wearing those goggles.
Yeah, that's true. You just keep banging into everything because you're wandering around. But that's the news that's exciting the quote unquote mainstream drone world. But I actually think, and that's just why I wanted to start with this a bit, Blair, is I think that mainstream, what we consider to be mainstream at the minute, which is small mom and pop operators and maybe some companies with 5 or 10 employees, or 10 or 20 drones, I think they're being pushed out of the way. I think that the start of the shove is happening and they're being ignored. Anyone else care to disavow me of that statement?
We'd always do that. But the interesting thing that if those new goggles do have GPS, they have made a fatal misstep in trying to secure the loyalty of the FPV market, because no doubt that'll talk to the O3 air unit and broadcast remote ID for home-built drones, which I think people are going to just say, no, thank you, we'll go to Walksnail or we'll go to HD0. We're not having this, because there's a huge pushback within the FPV freestyle community against this remote ID. I think they've made a big mistake there. I think the old goggles will become very valuable because they will not have the remote ID built in. See what happens.
I don't know. I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I'm surprised that enjoy. Go on, mate.
Yeah, so I'm going to say, thinking aloud though, I mean, there's already hacks for remote ID out there for free. So I think someone will just, because the goggles will be speaking to, I was going to say, I wonder if they're speaking to the drone and out from there. If they are, they could be hacked. If the goggles speak directly to the app, then it might be a little bit more difficult. Well, it's probably not on Android so difficult, but I imagine someone will simply do that. And for people
with FPV, you don't have the app. The FPV, it's just the goggles in the air unit, eh?
Yeah. So that's true. But I think with the hacks community, they might even be in a position where they could charge for these things because people will be willing to pay. So it'll simply make a lot of hackers very rich, I imagine.
But it's almost on the remote ID thing, and I've forgotten the name. There's a Linux distribution with loads of amateur radio stuff on it. They've included on that distribution now, and it's on here, so you can see what it is. It's on this stick, and I use it on my other laptop to go with me with this. And the reason. But anyway, in the distribution, they've got detection of DJI stuff built in now. And on Friday, I was sat in the pub in Nottingham Road, and an M300 flies past and starts hovering over us, over the railway and infrastructure, and disappears off. And then everybody that's sat around the pub said, "Oh, we always thought that was you." And I said, "No, it's not me. I don't do that sort of a thing." And somebody is flying over infrastructure around our town and around about in the evening as well. And everyone is pretty hacked off about it. So I'm going to try and find out who it is. But it's probably one of our local security companies. But whatever they're doing is pretty illegal. in South Africa as it would be anywhere else. And it didn't help because that very evening the power lines were stolen in the village and we had 50 hours power cuts. So it wasn't a very useful exercise. But there is a distribution of, and I've completely forgotten the name of it, of Linux with all the ham radio tools, and it's got decoding DJI stuff as standard in it now. So that's pretty cool, really.
So Gary, where's the guy from Manero? Is he not here today? Because I went to all the trouble of putting stuff in here. Look, just as a voice of support.
Oh yeah, no, he's coming. Sorry, he's coming next week now. He got stuck.
Always next week, eh?
He said Madrid. Hang on, let me check. Let me check where he's got stuck. Let me check where he got. I'm in a very ranty mood. I'm angry about that M300. I'm angry about all sorts of things.
Were the locals, Gary? Were the locals really hacked off about it?
Yeah, genuinely, yes. Because they've been saying, well, why is it? So it's operating within about a 5-kilometer radius, and nobody knows who it is. So, well, I mean, immediately it's one of two things: it's either some good guys protecting us, not doing a particularly good job, or it's some bad guys scoping out potential. Well, so people think, scoping out their properties. But if it is the good guys, let's say, it might have been a good idea if said security company said this is what we're doing in the local area. But it's people from within more than that, over a distance of about 10 kilometers, that live over a distance of 10 kilometers have moaned about it. But the coincidence is they all live along the railway, so it must be scoping.
It won't be someone scoping out for.
It must be the railway infrastructure,
300 or whatever, because you're not being covert. You're just making sure you're seen where you could do exactly the same thing with a smaller drone, couldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, the only reason I mention it is because I was in a situation about a year ago where I was on a tube train on the Central line, I think, coming into London from the northwest. We were at we hadn't gone underground. We were at a train station. We pulled into a train station, and I happened to look up, and there was an M300 hovering what looked to be at eye level over the car park, probably only about 50 meters from the train, and a couple of people noticed it and highlighted it to other people on the train. There was a little bit of interest. Nobody was outraged. A few people were curious. I was curious, obviously, because I was trying to work out where the operator was stood, but I couldn't see them. And I know enough about the regulations to understand the distances involved and where they should be stood, but I didn't know if they had an operating safety case in place or not. But it elicited a little bit of conversation. And then the moment we pulled out of the station, everyone went back to their books and their newspapers. And I wasn't sure if that was just purely a London thing. Most people were like, well, do you know what? It's just not really impacting me, so I don't really care. And then they're back into their normal lives and they've forgotten about the moment they step off the train.
So here's a funny story that I saw on Facebook earlier. There was a guy mapping that I know, and they were mapping an old derelict site. So the site is derelict. There's an old building on it, and there was a Karen, and the Karen came up to him. What are you doing? You know, being nosy, being a Karen. Sorry if there's anyone out there called Karen. This is not meant to be offensive towards you. But a NIMBY, whatever you want to call them, came and gave the pilot a load of hassle. So the pilot said, "Oh yeah, we're mapping it for construction next week for an illegal immigration centre to be built here." And within 2 days, it was on the news that they were doing that. And to be honest, why not? If someone in the UK comes and gives you hassle and you're flying legally, what are you doing? Oh, we're just checking the area because they're going to build a new immigration centre. It'll stop people asking you so quickly. And even the news channels fell for it. It's the best line I've seen in a long time. So next time I'm mapping somewhere and someone asks me what I'm doing, I think I might just throw that line.
Well, that, or you can say we're building a training centre to train drone pilots to spy through people's windows.
Yeah, that's another good.
Yeah. No, it was just I dismissed it. You see, the thing is, people had said to me for a couple of 6 months now. Why are you flying back and forth? Who's this flying back and forth up and down the railway? Etc. Why are you doing this? I said, it was not me, and I didn't believe them, to be honest. You do see the odd tourist drone kicking, the odd Mavic kicking about, and I didn't believe them. But I sat there, pint in hand, and this thing cruised down the railway and then back up again. Like, oh, and then so I thought, oh, best I have a crack at that recent DJI decoding software, and then with a little bit of Google fur, discovered that, as I think Mac put in there, that Ubuntu LXQT distro has it built in, which is quite a thing. So there's two things there, isn't there? A, well, what is that drone operation? And B, oh my goodness, you can just download a distro, put it on a disk, have an SDR, and you can start decoding DJI drones. That's pretty amazing, really. And that's not the remote ID signal. That's that. What do they call it? There was another word for whatever. The other
packets. About.
Yeah, those messages that they put in. So yeah, that's nothing to do with RID. But I do have the app on my phone now, that drone tracker or whatever it is, just in case they've updated the firmware on that thing and it's putting out RID. Because then when I'm sat at the pub, we'll see exactly what it is. And it also means I have to go to the pub again on Friday.
The only problem with this, Gary, is you've now officially turned into a NIMBY.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, but it's not my backyard. Actually, it's not my backyard. It's the pub's backyard and a load of other people. But it's interesting because if they've been doing this for 6 months over the infrastructure, our railway lines are stolen. The overhead power lines are stolen every week, at one side or the other, and different bits. So it's having zero impact, and there's zero fear. And if the flights are saber rattling on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock when everyone's sat outside the pub, well, I wonder who's paying for it, and really what value they're getting at it. They stopped and looked at a squatter camp area. They definitely
maybe if they kept the lines energized, it wouldn't be stolen so often.
Well, yeah. That's
it's just the power cuts. They think, oh, the power's off, we'll whip those wires.
No, it is exactly when a lot of it's happening now. It's exactly when a lot of it's happening. But there's a bit more to it with the railway. So I'll stop my ranty head in a minute. In that the northbound or southbound side is stolen alternately at different distances. So the sum of that is both sides of the railway can't work, which is very clever. It's a bit more than just...
They should see Mark. He's got a working railway.
Yeah, exactly. It's an electric rail when it's working. So I've had enough of ranting. Shall we have some excellent video footage from Ian? Because you've come quite a long way. In fact, let me share that screen. Did I shut it? I did. Oops. All right, no, let's have a video first. But you had some great stuff on Twitter. How is it going for you? And do you want to explain it before?
Yeah, Joe, you're going to start off with the Dublin or the Gatwick?
Up to you. You go however.
Let's start off with the Dublin, but everyone on, make sure you're on mute because we don't want any giggling.
What's that? You've had a call of a drone sighting? Yes, we'll deploy immediately.
This isn't at the start,
Hang
Gary.
on. Go back to the beginning.
Welcome to Dublinton. Hello, children. Welcome to Dublinton, where the local airport has recently bought drone jamming guns. This is Mr. Kelly. He's a NIMBY that lives local to the airport and is very unhappy about the North Runway. He's about to report one of his occasional hoax drone sightings to local authorities. What's that? You've had a call of a drone sighting? Yes, we'll deploy immediately. Hello, have you seen a drone flying about? We've had a report, but there's nothing on the drone detect system as usual. Hello, have you seen a drone flying about? Hello, have you seen a drone flying about? Hello, have you seen a drone flying about? In an effort to locate the drone, the Dublinton firefighters lift their chief up on the fire engine's ladder. I can see something in the sky. Pass me the jammer laser gun thingy, what's it? Shouted Chief O'Connor. Oh, sweet fecking baby Jesus. We've got a hell of a fire to put out this time, exclaimed Chief O'Connor. I've no idea what the dimwits have jammed this time. I'm just glad it's not my DJI M30 again, said PC Murphy to his HQ.
There we
Well,
go. So that's
a telling documentary on the current
Another
development.
BBC documentary hits the mark.
Yeah, it is.
so. Obviously, that's a parody of where genuinely things have gone in Dublin over
Barely
the
a
last,
parody, though.
over the last week. So the situation is that they've got the drone jamming guns, and they've equipped the firefighters with them. So they've just got to get authorization to use them now. No one seems to know whether it's just going to be using radio jamming or if it's going to be radio jamming and plus GPS. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Let's put it that way. See what happens.
I can't wait to see the headlines. High-tech drones dodge jamming device operated by airport. Drones still buzzing airport despite this new high technology. Yep.
And I guess nobody at the airports thought it sensible to understand whether the drone jamming guns actually have any detrimental impact on other aircraft avionics.
That's
using them freely.
Yeah, that's my concern because there's a blasé. Oh well, if it's RF, that won't do anything at all, which may be true, may not be true. Because I mean, there'll be nobody that's had the money to test all the jamming on every aircraft system, on every model of aircraft that's currently in use that'll be landing at airports. I don't believe that for a moment because it'll be so expensive to do. So I think there'll just be, there would have been some tests and a general assumption it'll be fine. But, I can't imagine too many people fired a GPS jammer at commercial air traffic. And that's what you could genuinely have happen here by mistake.
Yeah, but nothing like that could happen. I mean, everybody knows that even 5G signals don't affect radar altimeters.
No, not at all. Not in any way. And funny enough, you can keep these things on all the time when you're in an aeroplane, and they're what?
Never used to be able to, though. You had to turn all your devices off, all your cameras, all your phones, everything off, because they're so delicate, these systems in aircraft. Well, you think they'd use something more resilient.
Quite so. But yeah, it would be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if they cause any hard resets in navigation equipment or anything else. Well, there's so many things you could test. I'm sure it wouldn't get to the flight computer, but I wouldn't mind betting it might cause some dodginess if fired straight.
The BBC might put one in a cannon, one of these jammer guns in a cannon, and shoot it at an aircraft. That would be the best thing. There'd be a comprehensive scientific test, see if it breaks the windscreen of an airplane.
Yes, absolutely. Well, but what about just the legality of firing RF in whichever direction?
Well, didn't they get the sign off from the regulator?
Apparently, that's in process, so they haven't quite got the legal permission yet, but they're just waiting on that. That's being fast tracked, so I think we're talking a couple of weeks at most. But that's the vibe that's being given out.
Well, the vibe that's being given out, but I'm sure the Irish FCC will exactly want to do those tests of RF against aircraft and stuff like that, because they've got to sign off everything that's on the aeroplane, transmitting wise, whilst it's there. I don't even know.
Politicians involved. It's politics, isn't it? So they'll just be. It's getting done. Period.
I'm pretty sure that Ofcom would never license anything like that, because I don't know much about drone jamming technology, but I'm pretty sure I was chatting with somebody recently who was telling me that targeted jamming is a myth. It's a blast everything and everyone gets affected. It's the sort of electronic warfare type jamming the Russians are employing on a widespread across the Ukrainian front, and everyone is affected and you just have to get around it. And the same would apply surely at the airport, and it would interfere with everything, not just personal devices, but avionics and all sorts of other equipment.
Well, they're using the handheld jammers, and so they're directional. So I wouldn't
Yeah, but have you seen that? I saw a picture of a girl. There was a model, obviously, holding one of these things. It's got a telescopic sight. Do you know how wide the beam is on those things? It's got a log periodic or a Yagi antenna, which is going to give you like a 20 or 30 degree wide beam. Why do you need telescopic sights on something that shoots a 30 degree wide beam?
I hope
Yeah,
it's
I
got a
think
little
it
laser
looks-
on it as well, so it can put a
It looks
dot
to
on
me
it.
like it doesn't even have a zoom. Actually, it looked like your normal.
You're just a red dot sight.
Yeah, like a red dot sight, exactly. So it looked more like it was there to look like military bling instead
She was
of
dressed in
having a
camo.
night sight.
She had to be hidden. The model was dressed in camouflage military
But you
camo.
couldn't see her then.
No, you had to assume she was there. It was,
Yeah.
it's all hype. This just shows the level of hype they have to roll out to justify the price they charge for these ludicrous bits of kit.
And these bits of kit, by the way, their range is not that good. They'll tell you it can do X distance, but reality is actually they can't. They're not as good as you think they are. You know, if it can hit a kilometre to
I
flood
think
a
they are
channel-
as good as I think they are.
The inverse square law takes no.
anything over about a kilometre, and generally they don't swamp enough, because the further they get from the point you pull the trigger, they actually, the signal is not as strong a kilometre out. So
Inverse square.
yeah,
You double the distance, you get quarter the power.
yeah, so that they won't, because DJI kit is so good. Generally, over a kilometre, they're not much cop anyway. To be honest, it's just reality.
Yeah, no, I on many levels, I just don't believe it, and I don't believe it's not butter. But we haven't got proof yet, have we? We don't actually have proof that there's been a drone there in any way, and there some passive detection systems have got to be employed first before you jump straight to let's shoot them all down.
Yeah, I think this also underlines the concern that they don't have the correct video imaging because if you have the video and imaging, we mentioned when we talked about this before, then you have the automated tracker. So the very fact they've given them handheld suggests they couldn't get. Well, it's either been a cost decision. Oh, that's expensive. Although you'd have thought of what's going on now, that those questions would be out the window. So you think it's more that actually they haven't got the capability there yet to plug that in. So they've gone for the handheld, and maybe it's a bit of a PR thing as well. You know, walking around with these big, huge guns. Look at us. We've got everything locked down. I think it's more that, put them out in front of the press, and maybe that's the plan in the end of look at us looking very scary. Maybe
there's probably a public confidence dimension to this as well. They want to reassure the public, if they need reassuring, that Dublin Airport is safe to fly in and out of, because I don't know about the number of airports in Ireland, but Dublin's probably the biggest and one of only a handful probably. So they want to. It's a public confidence thing, but it sounds to me like the airport actually needs a sort of an examination of the risk profile and a much better blended solution, rather than just going for the first thing that looks sexy in a video being pointed at the sky with a telescopic sight that isn't going to work.
Because where are they going to point it? No one's seen these things. There's only reports. I don't think anybody in a position to take sort of counteraction has actually seen the drone. So where are you going to point the damn thing? What are you going to aim it at? There's nothing to see.
Yeah, it's like the white whale in Moby Dick.
The demos they do, it concerns me from a marketing viewpoint, because we all know how drones work. But if you have a look at the marketing videos, they're firing the jammer. The drone's conveniently nearby and very clear and easy to see, and it's had its default radio behavior changed to land. Now we know that isn't the default, so you've actually set up that test to make it look like you shoot a jamming gun and the drone just lands in place, which that bit I think is a bit naughty. You should, if you are going to show it how the drone would behave by default.
And remember, these are all phone-in sightings. To actually shut down the airport, you don't need the drone. You just need one of these.
Well, that they say we saw with what they said last week, though, that it would actually be someone within the airport. But having said that, they have said now, and they put this out leaflets locally. So this is the two-pronged attack, which is partly what Gary said. You should educate people, but it should be education. They've gone a step further, which is a bit daft. they've said call 999 if you see a drone, which means if people see a light in the sky, you're going to have people inadvertently doing false sightings. And obviously, if you want to create mischief as well, you could call in a sighting because they can't say you're wasting police time because they can't prove you've not seen it. You could say, no, I genuinely saw something. I'm doing this as a good citizen. They wouldn't be any the wiser either way.
And what's the odds that all those people in the airport who saw the drone, none of them had a phone on them to take a picture of it? What are the odds of that?
None of them are taking a camera on holiday. Not one of them.
The drone moves too fast and it goes between the buildings, so you can't get a photo of it.
Unless there's a Hawker Hurricane around.
Yeah, quite so. Now, other video you've got there, Ian, and I think I'm very, very impressed with this. Can we? This caught my eye today, and you've had a victory today. So well done, you. Do you want to unpack it?
Yeah, we'll have to. I mean, technically, the DFT can still appeal this, but the DFT barred me from doing freedom of information requests about Gatwick last year. So I've had to fight via the Information Commissioner's office against that. And I did a lot. I mean, I spent about 2 days putting together all the freedom of information I'd done, why the number I'd done. They said, actually, given it was over like 3-4 years, there's only like 20 requests. And a lot of those requests were, well, you've not answered the last request. So, I'm refining it down. So it was a little bit cheeky. But yeah, the full judgment's 5 pages. So that will go out public, and it unequivocally they fell in my favour on all the points. So you can see there the Information Commissioner is specifically saying that the Gatwick drone incident is of wider public interest. I mean, there you've got it, and it's true, it is. The drone industry has been damaged by it, and you've got all those passengers that weren't able to take their flight. Some will have lost money. And it's in their interest as well to know, what actually went on. Fair play to you. Well done. You're getting there slowly, but surely. So can we watch that video now? Yeah. This is the more serious one, which deals with what's just gone on last week.
It could be easily reversed. This particular freedom of information had been a long-fought one by a UAP researcher that needed intervention by the Information Commissioner. It was trying to acquire some of the emails of a senior civil servant called Stefan Roberts. Let's go back in time and refresh our memories.
Moving back to the start, I think we're playing at the start. It missed about a minute.
This week saw a bit of a twist in the Gatwick narrative, as the Department for Transport released a spreadsheet with redactions that could be easily reversed. This particular freedom of information had been a long-fought one by a UAP researcher that needed intervention by the Information Commissioner. It was trying to acquire some of the emails of a senior civil servant called Stefan Roberts. Let's go back in time and refresh our memories.
Now, Mr. Stefan Roberts could never be a disgruntled civil servant at all after what he said just there, would he?
Stefan, who was a private secretary to the Secretary of State for Transport, tweeted that he knew what really happened at Gatwick. He deleted his tweet once drone users and journalists began offering a pint for his insights. There's now even suspicion the redactions were deliberately made easy to read to bring the Gatwick questioning to an end, without doing so officially. That said, would the DFT really do that, having battled so long to keep the farce at Gatwick completely under wraps? This is the spreadsheet in question. On Excel it takes a couple of steps, but as seen here, revealing the redacted data can be as simple as hovering the mouse over a cell. Interestingly, there are some new revelations in the sheet. Like against the original advice of the Ministry of Defence, the Home Secretary on day 2 approved the use of Night Fighter and Skywall, which is a radio jammer and net deployment system. On another sheet there is information that appears important, that has been left visible. This ties in with a Ministry of Defence email that suggested the drone had crashed and been recovered, while there was a supposedly unrelated drone found. The fact the Gatwick operation wound up after this finding suggests there was a drone after all. It failed early on, likely on its first flight, and authorities, having chased lights in the sky for days afterwards, didn't want that to come to light.
So that's the latest twist in the tail. That it looks like, from what we're seeing, that actually there was a drone initially, so probably just the flight on the 19th, and that it actually landed or crashed. And then the authorities spent a couple of days after that effectively panicking at navigation lights being reported by police officers and chasing a drone that wasn't there. It just, when I saw it with the MOD, we're just having one source that says, well, hey, we found a drone. And the MOD one's even saying we shouldn't be taking credit for capturing it. So somebody had obviously been saying we should be taking credit for this. Woo, we've caught the Gatwick drone. And someone said, well, no, because if someone found out that wasn't true, you're going to have a lot more embarrassment there in the press and, questions to answer. Interesting thing, I missed out on that actually. The spreadsheet. I think it's worth you doing a SUAS article on it, really, Gary. Putting a link so people can have a look at it themselves. But Gatwick Airport did have photographs on the 19th of what they thought was the drone. Those were provided to the MOD. The Home Office said they were not. Basically, the Home Office was saying, no, we need photos where we can see a drone and show it to manufacturers. And that action was never marked as complete. So other actions in the sheet are marked as complete. And the one that says, give us something that looks like a drone never was. Now, it was an ongoing action. So maybe that's the argument. But, clearly there's something that hasn't been shown to the public. And Giles York told the Parliamentary Defence Committee, literally with no photos. So it proves that what Giles York told Parliament is not fact.
Yes, and there's Louis. Thank goodness he's arrived now, because of course this is his favourite subject. So tell me again how you're so sure that there was something there and they pulled it away. I thought that was the thing they found on the northern boundary and was a Christmas toy.
It's after all this conversation, you see, that's taken place. So they've been thinking, what do we do about this thing? Do we claim victory for it? And so I think what they've actually, because you can actually see it's a matter of fact. They were having meetings twice a day up until that point. So they dropped the meetings back. They wound up the operation. The questions after it were actually, who's going to pay for this operation? So all the questions came more conclusive, like, let's wrap this thing up. So it looks like, actually, yeah, it is a toy. It was something so embarrassing that they didn't want to say, look what had actually closed the airport down. And that's why we've never seen it. And that's why no one's ever been chased. And that's why the operation's closed down and no one's been pursued. So that is where it looks to be.
But here's the interesting thing. I'm surprised that even happened on that day, because there's no proof that drone wasn't there before that day.
Well, it would depend on logs. But then again, if that drone wasn't what they thought that had started it all, they would have kept that operation going on more days, and they didn't. They basically, they had the RAF capability there. Then they knew there wasn't anything flying about. They then had that drone, and I think really the penny dropped that there isn't anything here to be chasing. But I think they just kept it going basically end of day, just to see. Because by then, because you've got that much noise from police officers saying, no, I've seen something, even though it was always as soon as the air traffic put the nav lights on, there would have just been let's just be a little bit cautious. But really, that the 21st was the last day of anything happening, and that's the day when they're discussing the finding of that drone.
And here's the interesting thing we should remember for the 19th. It was a wet and windy evening. The time it was reported, it was very wet and it was very windy. So that's also something.
Well, that's why we thought it didn't add up, because we thought, well, there's a good chance your drone will fail, and maybe that's exactly what did happen.
Maybe, but the problem for me is that drone could have been sat there for a week before, because unless you sweep the airfield completely,
well, it isn't a week.
It could be an accidental find.
If it's the 19th, it's only been there a day for somebody to find it, and as Giles York said to Parliament, it's a very, very, very big.
Yeah,
and the drone's very, very small.
It'd be like this big. It'd be you know, they're not. It won't be very big at all. But I think it'd be interesting to know those images. I mean, will a freedom of information go in for those images, Ian? Because
I believe someone has, other than me, has actually already put in a freedom of information. I'm going to check after this, but I think it happened just before we came on air that somebody's stuck in a freedom of information on the images, because obviously it's
public knowledge.
It's public that can be unredacted. Someone's already added an annotation. There were quite a few followers on that freedom of information. So I think there's people following it up already, because I was going to do that if no one else had. But I couldn't do it yet because of the ruling. So I thought it was like one of those to put down on my list. But yeah, well, I'm absolutely convinced that they'll fight that, but we shall see.
The truth shall out. Well done for doggedly continuing down this road, and it's beginning to come home to roost, I think. And I'm sure Craig can't talk to this, but I'm sure the military must have a fairly good pattern of life of civilian drone usage now from its various equipment that it must have located on military airfields. I think Northolt's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean the RAF has got a reasonably good force protection footprint, they call it. So they've done quite a lot of development of internal capability. I don't know a great deal about it. They use a variety of overlapping drone detection capabilities. They don't use drone jamming, I can tell you that. But what they do is it's mostly about preventative intelligence. So understanding where the risk profiles are, where the likely launch points are, things like that. And actually this lends itself back into the whole question of Gatwick. You know, the question of whether there was a drone there at all in the first place is kind of irrelevant now, because it's happened. There was a knee-jerk reaction, I think we can all agree wasn't handled particularly well. The key question really for all of these airports, and both military and civil airports, is how you prepare for it now. So it's very much about prevention. And I don't know if you saw, most of you would probably have seen on YouTube this footage of this Belarusian sort of protest group. Actually, it's probably protest groups not strong enough to describe them, but they're a group that don't agree with the regime in Belarus and the way that it's communicating, coordinating with Russia. They launched, I think it was probably a DJI COTS drone into a Belarusian airbase and landed on the radome of a Russian AWACS aircraft that was parked on the ground as a recce. And then the next day they fixed some form of charge, some form of, they basically weaponized the drone, like a lot of the sort of weaponization that's going on basically in Ukraine. And they flew the drone in, landed it on the radome, and then detonated it and caused a certain amount of damage to the system. Now, that's a small drone causing a huge strategic effect, because it's taken out a particular strategic asset. And I'm pretty sure the Royal Air Force will be interested in that capability, because that's not the sort of risk that 7 or 8 years ago we were even thinking about. And now all of a sudden it's there. It's low tech-ish in the hands of people, as long as they can get access to the COTS drone in the first place, and the weaponization, and be able to weaponize it. So there's a whole sort of expanding sort of folder of risk that is coming out of this. I'm sure the RAF are looking at. I don't know, because I'm not involved. I'm ex-RAF, but I haven't been involved in that space for a while. But all of these should be, it wouldn't take much for I'm trying to describe them as disaffected entities causing major disruption at airfields just by flying things into the airfields. And there's lots of protests going on and strikes and people disaffecting. And then you have to look at the strategic situation with Russia. It wouldn't take much for a cell of GRU agents to do something like that at Heathrow, literally fly in, land on a Boeing 747 as it's
Yeah.
taxiing and do something which is of which grabs the headlines. So there's a whole expanding level of risk in this, and I'm pretty sure the airports, both civil and the RAF air bases, are looking at all of this very, very closely. So it's fascinating time.
Yeah.
So we need better control of explosives, so people can't weaponize drones or anything else for that matter.
I mean, that's always the thing, as we've said before. It's really the explosives that's the root cause issue. If you've got those, you're going to cause trouble anyway. But it's worth knowing on the RAF, actually, and the MOD around the counter drone, they've been quite open and straight in that they've got web pages on the counter drone. It's called AUKUS now, and even images. The RAF Force Protection Force have their own Twitter account. They tweet about the stuff. They put the photos on. So that was part of the stuff to actually get some of the replies back on Gatwick. We're saying, look, you are actually putting this in the public domain. This isn't. You can't call this national security, because it's not like Russia and China can't use Twitter or use a web browser, which is where it all is. And to be fair to them, they did say, fair point. And then unredacted stuff. That's how that email specifically came about, that said about them capturing the drone, was because I said, this just isn't going to hold up. I will go to ICO. I really don't think you're going to win on national security now. So yeah, it's just interesting that they seem to be really pleased with the counter drone system. It's now part of standard kit, in that it was a kind of like an experimental thing, and now they've got kind of some supply channel where you can actually order it, and they even had once internally some kind of innovation award. Staff there with what they've done. So that's the one good thing out of Gatwick. They proved the system there, and they've improved it since.
Yeah, it should all be kind of getting more and more squared away now, shouldn't it? As time goes by, because it's a threat we know, and you're right about stopping it. But Dublin, Ian and I, aside, have had conversations about Dublin, and if you wanted to stop it, if you truly wanted to stop it, I mean, the drone is kind of an expensive way of doing it, really. As we all know, well, you shouldn't say these sort of things, but you just chuck a hold all over the fence. In Dublin, you can, because the main road goes by the side of it with an alarm clock in it ticking. That'll stop the airfield for an hour or so. You can continue doing loads of little iterations of that all over the place.
Or as Mark said, just use your phone.
Yeah, if you're of a mind to do it, you could disrupt stuff. But speaking to where Craig was going, that's a little bit like shooting the torpedo at the Death Star, isn't it? We're at that territory now with a little weapon. If it gets in the right place, boom, whatever that thing is, it does require a little bit of skill. But this is the world we live in, isn't it? So there's that one done.
So someone could lay some of that model railway track all the way up to one of those
model railway track.
Because those little carriages are
Wallace and Gromit coming in. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what else have we seen this? Now where's our light show, Mark? I want to say, well, why aren't we having a light show? You'll have to unmute.
I like it when he talks with his mute on. It's much more pleasurable on the ears.
It's much better, yeah.
And he's still doing it.
He's still doing it.
You might like it on mute.
Oh, he's twigged.
So the swarm at the minute is it's still going through its soak testing. What I call soak testing. So just fly. Make sure we're happy with it, because when you've got swarm, there's so many things that can go wrong. And it's understanding those things, from designing the show itself to the way they behave. The more you've got, the more complicated it is. Do you take them all off at once? Do you take so many off at once, then another load so many at once? It's a big learning curve for me, and it's just a time thing. But that reminds me, there is something I will try to get done. So I was talking to a light show designer today, and he's had a really cool idea. So we're probably going to try something a bit different as well.
Did he involve a pair of balls by any chance?
Pardon? No, I'm not doing it. You can ask all you want, Ian, it's not happening. Just not happening. So, yeah, and it's just, it's about understanding how the drones move and everything. It is really interesting stuff, because Swarm it's in some respects it's easier to fly than one, but in some respects it's not easier to fly than one. If you're following like your operations manual and stuff, it's just about understanding the setting them up, getting them all up. It's really interesting, to be honest.
Mark, how many aircraft are in your Swarm?
So at the minute we have 25. 20 are going away. We have another 5, although at the minute there's 100 being made, so there'll be up to another 100 soon. Our OSC gives us 600 feet, so I don't know any other Swarm in the UK that can go to 600 feet at all. I just don't know of one. And our maximum Swarm is 250 at the minute. We may get that changed later, but as we're an OEM at the minute, we've just capped it so we can just learn. It's about soak testing, making sure the aircraft's all right. We flew a single one in 50-mile-an-hour winds. So those winds we had a bit ago, we really put it through its testing there in that wind. It was whizzing around perfectly fine in 50-mile-an-hour winds. So it's really good.
I'm assuming I'm assuming your operational authorization as well means that you don't have to have the single operator for each drone. You have measures in place to prevent that or to avoid having to do that.
So yeah, when you fly Swarm and you do your OSC, when I wrote ours, I did it so it's dual pilot. I did it so there's only one pilot needed really for a Swarm of 200 or 250, but because of the way you work with a Swarm, you need the pilot, the main guy operating the Swarm. They have to concentrate on all the stuff going on with the Swarm. My job with them is to take all the information coming in from the ground crew. So if you're working at an event, everything comes through me, and I only feed what's relevant to the remote pilot if he needs to know. So I will only feed what I need to across to him. But I am also his backup. So if he's unwell or has a problem, I'm there as the backup as well at all times. So it's dual operation we run, and that's how it is. And most OSCs that I've seen always have at least one RP, and then a competent observer is their second. But our Swarm is set up so, and it's just the way our operations manual is. I'm not giving anything away special. It's 2 RPs basically.
In the event and I don't know enough about your software to be able to say, but in the event that your software might fail, what's the default behavior for the drones? What do they do?
So that's
without giving away too much IP, obviously.
So this is where it gets interesting. If one laptop was to fail, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So that the important bit is, no matter what's going on, we have dual everything. If we have dual ground control, if you like, and we also have. It's like really interesting because even if the laptop battery was to, even if the generator stopped working, so we have a generator. If that dies, the power to the laptop has still got its battery, but we also have a UPS as well. So we've got, the stopping the Swiss cheese from happening. Basically, we're putting as much in the way as we can to prevent failure. So it's generator. There's even a UPS, and then there's laptop batteries.
What if you get the blue screen of drones?
Well, and the important bit is with the software we're using, it actually has 2 things. So even if the primary computer was to fail, it doesn't matter. The secondary picks it up. Do you know what I mean? It's dual system, so it doesn't matter too much. It's like the command link. There's dual command link. So if we lose one, we can still issue commands on the second if we have to.
What happens when remote ID comes in and they're all broadcasting their little remote ID system and the band is saturated?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting, Bruce, because if the regulator is not very wise, they will cause a fundamental problem. And this is the thing, regulators don't think about stuff like this half the time. So, I mean, it's really bizarre because in the UK, if you go for a swarm up, you have to have ADSB receiver. So you'll have it on your computer or an iPad and you're receiving the signals. However, we're not far from a small airport. So we're, I don't know, it's about 7 kilometers. It's about 7 kilometers away. So we're not inside its airspace. They're not inside ours, whatever. What's really bizarre is you see these light aircraft and nothing shows up to us. But the CAA say you must have ADSB on your running at all times. The swarm is flying. And it's like, hang on a minute. It's not one eyeball is working, but the ADSB is not showing anything to us. So it just goes to show how much the small airfield is active, but we're not seeing anything from it.
And have they given you a criteria? Should you see an ADSB track that looks to be coming from? Have they said please start looking from 10 miles out or something like that? Because just having an ADSB receiver is
so it's part of your emergency procedures. Is okay. There's an aircraft. It looks like it's going to impact the swarm's air operating area. Get them down. You know what I mean? And it is
sure, but where do you start looking? You make a decision at 100 meters.
You need an alarm with settable parameters, so you can say.
Gosh, yes.
You can't have it written down because you don't know what the aircraft is true. It's about its height. So if the aircraft is at 1,000 feet and we're flying at 400 feet and it goes over the top of us, am I worried about? There's a 600 feet buffer. I'm not worried about that.
You don't know what he's an enemy, as it were. You don't know what he's going to do. He might descend through your swarm. You can't assume.
What if it's military, flying low-level sorties?
Now we have got a note. To be clear, there is a NOTAM in place when we fly the swarm, so we have to have them. So, and it is 1 nautical mile around the site. So,
Why isn't it aeronautical mile? Why do they use ship terms? Why not aeronautical miles? That'd be much better for airspace stuff.
So yeah. Well, so 1 nautical mile. Yeah, 1 mile basically around the takeoff point. There's a NOTAM, and it sits there, and it's really good where we are because generally they won't overfly us anyway because we're right near a power station. So they wouldn't want to fly too low near that anyway because the cooling towers have become their problem, not our drones.
Can you fly near Dublin Airport in the shape of a big bullseye and get and try their gear out? See how many drones they can bring down?
So no, we don't. There's no cameras on the swarm at all. There's no need for them. They're not designed for that. They're designed for light show.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've got a great big light, so they ought to be visible. If light aircraft pilots can't see them, then there's trouble. And it's nighttime as well. So I mean, there won't be a lot of too much GA about at night.
That's what's always amazed me in countries do. You can't fly your drone at night. You can't fly it at night. Well, it's the best time because there's not going to be any VFR aircraft below 400 feet at night in the areas where you're flying. And also you are you're more visible with the lighting, even with a Phantom or something. The lights are far more visible and watching for a white object below in ground clutter.
Yeah, and to be honest, we've flown it a lot in the daytime because if you're going to test, you just want to make sure the aircraft's performing. We want to fly it just as much as we can. So just fly it in the daytime.
I guess the other safety mitigation is that each individual drone is quite light, as in the masses low.
So what's interesting is if you typically go and buy one from the Chinese market, they're about anywhere from 1.4 to 1.8 kilos. However, ours are 400 grams.
Right, okay.
So ours are really light. We've designed them. They're running really well. They've given us great flight times for a show. And 400 grams is the flying weight of each.
Could you imagine in Canada, you'd have to have a maintenance log and a flight log for each one of them. Yeah. It'd be a full-time job filling out the paperwork.
Yeah. And I mean, bear in mind, you don't typically fly a swarm in the middle of a city as well. Let's be clear. typically they're in countryside, or there are events where they're outside the event, and the event can then see them from a distance. They don't typically always fly right in the middle of a city unless you've got a lot of space for them.
I was going to say it will sometimes be the case, though.
Yeah. We can fly them in congested areas, but it would have to be a big park or something. Like you could fly them in Hyde Park, for example. That would be possible.
I'd like an indoor show. Can you do an indoor show?
Now, technology's out there for indoor, but we've not gone that way. But you can literally do indoor light shows. It's something I looked into, and it's possible, which is crazy.
Yeah, I was just thinking about your app.
I was just going to say, I imagine when you get to like 200-ish drones, you'll be able to do really quite a complex and decent light show, especially in the UK, where you'll know the money isn't there as much as it is in some other countries. Because I've been aware with Philip on this, and apparently, because if a council in the UK was to spend a considerable amount on a drone show, you'd have all the local NIMBYs kicking up a real big fuss about the amount of taxpayers' money being spent. But apparently in some other countries, that kind of thing is it just is the way it is, and the councils can spend a great deal of money on it.
Well, here's kind of the great thing about the drone swarms is they're not fireworks, and fireworks shows can cost as much as a drone show. They really can. They can burn through money in minutes, fireworks shows, depending what you want. So the great thing is about the drones is we're not going to be noisy. Well, not as much noise. So you're not going to, dogs and animals, horses, anything that doesn't like noise instantly is better off. Small kids don't always like big bangs. Instead, you're just going to get that beautiful show of whatever the drones are doing, whatever it happens to be about. So there is some noise level from them, but if you're further enough back, you'll probably not really notice that much. They're not as noisy as a 450 size drone for sure.
But can't you put some speakers or something to do some kind of fireworks noise on the drones?
But you'd be better off doing like some music, and then they're performing to music is what I would prefer them to be doing. I know people are thinking fireworks, but to me, I mean, every year, and if you look how many people have problems with fireworks shows and everything, I think it's a way forward. And I think it's going to be a bigger thing. I think give it another 3 years, maybe 4, they'll be really popular. Because I reckon there's about 10 companies in the UK with OSCs for light shows at the minute.
Yeah, I mean, the main entry hurdles have been a report of regulation aside for a moment, and the time with the OSC, which is a genuine hurdle there as well. But before you've even got that far, I think it has been cost and complexity. I mean, Mark knows himself. There was a brief Facebook few comments it was supposed to be, and turned into about 65 comments in the space of about an hour of just trying to understand it. If you actually look and you start trying to understand this, you have to go through pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of information, understanding the software. And some of that actually is because you have companies at the moment that are making it a bit more complicated than it needs to be because it suits them and they could do licenses. But I do think we'll have that being a lot more simplified and more affordable and controllable. But I think Mark's absolutely bob on, especially up in the north of England. Fireworks are a huge issue with a lot of councils, and given a choice, there'd be councils that, if they could, they would seriously think about banning them. So I think drones can fit into that space nicely. Syncing them to music, to me, is the perfect way of doing it, because I imagine with a light show as well, you can literally time things to be hitting particular marks so they're in sync with the music that you're hearing. And that, to me, I just find that, even just as someone watching it, just far more entertaining than a fireworks show, to be right honest.
And we've got an idea how to put an Easter egg at the end of shows as well.
Where you're going to put explosives in each one of those little drones and make them all blow up at once?
No, so Think of a long exposure.
A light painting.
Bruce knows
kind
about
of thing
that,
you
and
can
that's
do
what
with
the
it as
officer
well.
said. But anyway,
So that means that the first time we'll see your show will be at the coronation.
No, I doubt it.
yeah. Well,
We won't have the 100 built by then. I don't think our 100 will be in the air by. Well, the 100 for the customer won't be in the air by then. So we'll see.
What's disappointing me with a lot of air shows today is the fact that a lot of them haven't even been live. They've done air shows for cities, film them, and then put that as video that's been dropped in.
And to be honest, at big events, America does that a lot. And I do think that's one thing that we will end up probably doing, because our test site is literally in the middle of nowhere. And because we can get to 600 feet means that we can get to a height where we can have another drone do the filming, or drones do the filming of the swarm. And there can be nothing there, and they can just take that and they impose it over whatever they need to. So I do think there'll be a market for that kind of stuff. America does it all the time.
I think there shouldn't be a market for that kind of thing, though, because then I could just do that in After Effects for nothing, next to nothing. Yeah. And you could just claim, well, we've done a drone swarm, and nobody'd be any the wiser. I just think with that thing, that's come about partly because of the complexity of doing it, partly because of regulation, and partly probably because of IP ratings in the past of just knowing these things are fine with the weather. I think once you get past that, then we really are getting somewhere then.
So we've seen a lot of spectacular fails, though, haven't we? Where the whole columns of the things have descended.
That's been hacking by competing businesses, though, in China.
Well, I've not seen if that's right or wrong yet, Ian. I don't know how true that is. I have seen where the swarm has descended. I have seen where you get the odd rogue one. I know why that happens now. I understand more on that. I mean, the swarm is so interesting. There's all these aspects you kind of got to watch for as you're flying and making sure you're ticking all your boxes. And flying in cities near live events, a stadium, you wouldn't really be able to do it because the OSC requires such a distance of separation. Unless the event had a big car park and didn't let any cars into it, there'd be no way to really do it. And then half the stadium would never see it because it's behind them.
A question on that. Once you've got a few under your belt and you've proven it, can you actually get your OSC revised to then make it a bit more flexible for other use cases?
So you'll be stuck always with the 1-to-1 rule. So the swarm is always stuck at a 1-to-1 rule. So at 50 meters, you have to have like a 65-meter buffer. And it's in CAP 722E, the rules on separation for the swarm. And the CA will not kind of flex on that. That is kind of rigidly said. How you want the swarm to behave or you want it to do during light shows, that's fine.
Does the BVLOS advisory apply in terms of distance? That, you've got to be able to orient the drone properly by line of sight?
They have to be within line of sight and they have to be so far from our command center. We are restricted on that distance.
There was a point in the comments then about the loss of drones. That's quite normal in light shows, and it's not something to be concerned about because that's why you should be having it underneath that it's falling onto safe ground, because that's just one of the risks that comes with it, especially when you're running so many drones. Statistically, just the likelihood that one of those is going to have a problem that it's not actually a concern like people would think it would be.
And this is why the CA insists on this 1-to-1 buffer. That's why such a big sterile areas. However, I am determined, if not, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here, I don't want those issues. So we're doing all the testing we can to understand why they have those problems. So if we know why drones are playing up, we're now drilling down into, we want that solution, because the last thing you want is as an OEM, if we sell 100 drones, I don't want that customer phoning me 3 days later saying that I lost 15.
Is it one-to-one? Does it one-to-one apply to fireworks as well? Because I'd rather be hit in the face with a drone than a face full of pyrotechnics.
Yeah, they do have massive restrictions actually in public events. The fireworks have to, it's the wind orientation for them, and there are separational distances. They can't fly above 26 mile per hour winds. Typically.
I was going to say, I don't think it's all that far though, because you have them in the city centres and that. You know, you've seen them going off, and it's car park that's well within 100 meters.
Yeah, I'm aware they have some separation. I mean, so our swarm is waterproof, so our swarm can fly in rain. Rain doesn't bother it. We can do remote turn on, so you can lay all your drones out. And instead of, most people have to go around plugging in the XT30s as they go, and then the first one that's switched on, it's half an hour later before they get round them all. There's none of that with our swarm. You just put the battery in it, put it out on its spot, and then you can just switch it on when you want it on.
I imagine a lot of the issues will come back. There'll be prop, battery. I imagine with drones, if they're quite small, they probably won't have a massive level of redundancy in there with sensors. So I still think there's just because if you say you're running 300 drones, to say you're running 300 drones and you do light show after light show and not expect any to fail, I just don't think that's particularly realistic when you're talking very light drones and less sophistication. So while I think anything you can do to stop that, you should be doing anyway. That goes without saying. But I still think, because there's just this thing in the UK where it isn't the same in the rest of the world, where there's a thought of there can't ever be a failure, and it seems to be a little more pragmatism over that when you're running stuff of that scale.
I mean, these are also designed to, if they fall out the sky, they're not designed so they're solid, rigid. They will break on impact. So we don't want them. So if it does fail, we want, it goes in, that's fine. And if it does break, because it's designed to give, because you don't want it to be so rigid, like like a piece of metal. You don't want that. So it will break, and it will give where it needs to.
So what about a cheap option where why don't you just lift up a big boom like this with a whole matrix of LEDs on it from 2 heavy lift drones and then save all the problems?
Don't quite do the same cool stuff, Bruce.
Actually, Bruce, I think you've got something you could patent there.
Yeah.
I think you should get that done immediately.
No, it's been done already for the smoke, the dot matrix smoke thingy planes, isn't it? In America, that's how they do it.
What we need, Mark, what we need, and take this, I'll charge you for the idea, is laser pointers on each drone. So you shoot laser beams.
That's already what I want to do for the other version. So at the minute we have one version, but I want for the second one, so it can do like laser, and I want it to be able to hit like those spinning globes that you see, that in nightclubs, and I want it to be able to
disco balls.
Yeah, so a few glitter balls going by other drones, and we can just ping. And the only thing is, no matter what you're doing, the interesting thing is that the accuracy of RTK is still like 7 centimeters. So you've only got to be slightly out, and you will never hit your glitter ball correctly.
No,
so
Mark, you're losing the point. If you put laser pointers powerful enough, aiming at the crowds, you get a weapon of mass destruction. So that's the point.
Take out those people with drone guns anyway. Put a mirror on your drone and the laser pointer bounces back.
It was 300 to 1 then, isn't it? If one drone gun versus.
I mean, the use of
something, Gary. How do I send you something?
The use of lasers does
in a plain brown envelope,
case, though, doesn't it? The use of lasers does change the whole safety case because of the risk. So Lewis has got a great point. The risk to the viewing public, particularly. As much as I'd like to go back to the days when I, in my younger years, where a glitter ball was a key feature of my Saturday night, it's not nowadays. So I would like to go back to. I saw the comment earlier on talking about 15 drones that were lost
There you go.
in London. Do we know the cause of that? Was it a technical failure on the individual drones? Was it collision between the drones themselves? Was it a failure of the swarming software? Is that considered to be an attrition rate that's acceptable for swarming?
I don't know. I don't know on that one, to be honest. Oh, what's that?
Philip Rouse might have an idea with that for a number. I think some. I mean, to me, 15 does sound a lot, to be fair, but I've never done one, so I wouldn't know what the reality is there. I just know that generally a level of fail is not surprising when you're doing massive volumes.
It's got to be the depth of your pockets, isn't it? Is the issue. As long as your safety, as long as you got that safe area that if they drop into it, all's all right on the night. Surely it's just how deep are your pockets.
Yeah.
I was going to say, even this with 25s, it's all right. It's all right. It's quite cool.
That's
I think the only issue you have here is if you were doing a show, say for an event where they paid lots of money, they'd want probably 2 or 4 times this just to resolve more complex shapes. But
yeah,
it does look cool regardless.
I mean, don't get me wrong. That's what you can do with. That was 20. That wasn't even 25. And I think personally, the market, there's going to be enough space for small shows with 20 to 30 drones. And I can see a market where there's going to be shows for 100, 150, 1,000. So it'll just depend where companies want to put themselves. And don't get me wrong, the returns on investment will be there for these drone light shows. It's going to be there. I think if you had 100 drones, I think within maybe 5 flights or less, they'd be paid for quite happily.
It's interesting that Flying Drones with the Scoobs has said that. It said it was normal and begged people on Twitter and Facebook not to touch them if they were found. Well, 15 drones falling straight down within a demarked area is one thing, but that would suggest that these 15 drones were all over the place.
Well, I don't think that had been the case. I just think because they would have had to have it over a specific area. It's just if you haven't found them, if it's an area like London, whatever area it was that you had, that's going to be open up at some point, and there will be people. City centres, you have people wandering about just picking up everything. So it is a fair comment to say leave it alone just because it's got a LiPo battery in it. But
it might be that the show was over a containment area, which then subsequently closed, and when all the drones were down, and the ones that failed were kind of spread about in that containment area. Members of the public then got access to it.
Yes, exactly. That's what I think.
But I mean, there's some inherent dangers in that anyway, isn't there? Because drones fall into the ground, LiPo battery.
No, ours aren't LiPo.
Right. Okay.
But so then you couldn't open that. So if that were the case and you had an area, you'd have to say no, we can't open it until we found all our 15 missing. One of our drones is missing. There's a Disney movie in this, isn't there?
Yeah.
But there is the thing, you see, when you get your OSC, you have all these emergency procedures in place. So a fire isn't. And this is not me being lax about it, but a fire isn't what I consider a major thing, because we've got a clear designated someone that deals with that, and therefore and LiPo fires are not as common as you think they are. I've seen planes, I've seen LiPos go up, I've seen model planes crash which are even flimsier than drones. LiPos take a lot to go. Didn't we debunk you last week on exactly the same? You did.
These are quite small batteries anyway, aren't they, Mark?
Well, ours is sub 400 grams, so our batteries are.
Yeah, so they're pretty tiny things. So it's I think these kind of things are pretty minor issues that you've got mitigated in your procedures.
Yeah, but the ones that flew in London, for example, they were flying 4S batteries and 5,000 milliamps, I think, something like that. They'll be up that sort of scale, because you can't really flying on 3S won't do you a lot of good, to be honest. So they're typically 4S batteries, 5,000.
And how many Teslas are in the car park?
Absolutely. Well, look, Louis jumped in. We'll talk some more about Storms for certain when we see it live. We can't wait.
You will see it live at some point.
Or CG version, as Ian will do the CG version first.
Yeah.
But Louis jumped on because Louis, in the email that he sent me, and we did make brief mention of it earlier, and that's these DJI Integra goggles that are coming. But DJI did a particular thing with its very typical DJI announcer. Do you want to unpack what DJI did, Louis? That they might have issues
come
with.
on. It's quite easy. This afternoon I was looking at my mailbox and I saw something weird on my spam folder, and I went and it was an email from DJI offering to the people that bought the Avata from whatever date it was a coupon of 70 euros or something to change the motion controller to the new motion controller. Until then, okay, that and a few credits I had on DJI Store, I got the new motion controller almost for free, almost. But the funniest thing is someone at the marketing of DJI just added around 900 customers' emails on the CC line. So let's just say that my spam filter has been quite active these couple of last hours.
GDPR complaint?
No, because people are doing reply to all. Oh God, please don't. Please don't. You never do reply to all. But no, so I just called in DJI support and asked them, hey, do you guys know there is a thing called GDPR? Oh, yes, we know. We are very sorry. Yeah, put me through the legal. I want to have a conversation with them. So they got the message and they got my contacts. So let's see what comes out of it. But
free gifts for all.
It's completely unprofessional, unexpected. They said something. Oh, we had a technical malfunction. So,
what was your name?
Yeah, let's see how it goes. But
you get a free Inspire 3 now, you Louis. That's great.
Oh God, please don't. No, hey, come on. Can I send you the Inspire 3? I'm already fed up with drones.
Have you got one already?
Yeah, no. I don't want
yeah.
No, thanks.
Yeah,
No,
right.
thanks. I've had enough. Now it's only, if possible, small drones. I was at this weekend. We had the Portuguese Drone Pilot Association, App Drone, did a meetup this last weekend, and most of the people there had the smaller drones. The bigger drones above 250 are getting out of usage for the recreational pilots. That and the FPV flyers, they were going nuts with their small little bees flying, whizzing around. But what I could see is there are the number of larger drones, even Mavics and such, is getting smaller and smaller every day. And even the pros don't have the Mavic 3s, for instance, because no support on Litchi and the other apps they use. So
and they're end of life. Mavic 3's end of life. Boom, off it goes.
Yeah.
So
but funny, the thing is, when you go to one of these meetups, you can see the tendency of the market. People going every time to the smaller drones. Most of them are giving up altogether because they have bigger drones that they cannot fly anywhere. But
that 250 gram, it's only a temporary respite. Soon it will be 150, and then it'll be 100.
Come on, soon it will be, even paper planes will be forbidden by
Well,
whatever.
they are here in New
rule.
Zealand. We have no lower limit. Everything from 0 grams upward is regulated.
So paper
So-
planes are on the list.
If you have the radio control in them, they are. You get that little thing, a little motor on the back and thing. That is actually regulated just like a 14 kilogram, 200cc petrol powered plane.
Yeah, that's the thing. So
And in
yeah,
your hands, quite right too. That's all. I'll
but
say.
now about the news about DJI. You mentioned that you already discussed the news. Now they just had to cut the pricing of the. Judging for the number of customers they sent the email from, there are not many buying at the DJI store. So I really thought that could be more. Or then the email has a cap of 900 people on one
very
go.
telling. Mm.
So
Very telling, isn't it?
yeah, they had to do something to cut out. Although the new glasses are interesting, but they put one thing and take another. It's DJI all over again.
Yeah. The market's definitely cooling. It's definitely cooling, and we're seeing lots of venture capitalist startups panicking. I think you can see it like.
Wait till I do my next video on delivery drones. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, no. That's right, Bruce. You can see a resurgence of people announcing the delivery drones. I think that video from Africa has caused a lot of people. Oh, we do this too. We do that too.
Yeah. But
So-
you mean a resurgence of renderings? The crayon sets
Yeah,
have been taken out, and
so we are on the Me Too of drones. We had
Yes.
the Me Too movement, and now we have the Me Too of delivery drones.
yeah.
Did you notice
Oh,
that
yeah.
Walmart were originally they're doing a thing with Zipline? Walmart's original promo material showed them dropping their products by parachute, just like the fixed wing Zipline. Now they've gone to the cat cage, so they didn't have anything really.
Well, today I've seen three. I've had three designs sent to me: a folding one and two that look like all the other separate lift thrusts.
Guys,
And some
guys,
people are joining the
we've
dots.
seen the future. Gary, we've seen the future. To whoever
Garlic
saw
bread.
the Avengers games, the Avengers movies, you have an air fortress, and then the smaller drones will deploy to deliver it to the location.
Castles
So-
in the sky and all that sort of thing. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's a load of nonsense. Kicking off out there. There really is, and general panic, I think, in the building. I see someone on LinkedIn today has asked for lists of UK manufacturers that do the end-to-end entire product.
Yeah.
All the bits, the motors, the speed controllers, everything. I don't think there is one by a long shot.
Point him
Not
at that
by a
crowd
lot.
that's trundling around Milton Keynes.
Farnell, Mauser components. They can buy the pieces and start picking up the soldering iron, but they'll have to run a bit to get a soldering iron made in UK. But they can.
Yes.
Your best bet if you want to put something, but obviously it's with standard components, is 3D XR, because then you can get all your.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's some
You've
great.
got the staff there that know,
Yeah.
they know what they're doing there. You could definitely go and build something commercial.
Lewis, is it true that the Chinese soldering irons are spying on us?
Don't you know they have some of them have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and they have an app that controls the soldering iron. Come
They
on,
do.
Even
Bruce,
Chinese solder
Bruce,
can't be trusted.
we are lost. It's no longer plug and touch the tip of the soldering iron to see how hot it is.
Yeah, it's pretty mad. That I saw those. Right,
Very-
we're definitely going. Go on, mate.
I was going to say, if you want to see delivery, just see my little clip I just put for you.
Oh, hang on. Oh, here we go. Right, let's add this.
So, yeah, that's how you do delivery. You use one
It's
of
a
those.
mobile TARDIS. Is it bigger on the inside than the outside? Can you deliver entire lounge suites with that thing?
Hey Gary, can you find a video of the C5 That's
Sinclair
famous-
C5.
So that's one of my other projects that I've been
That-
working on with someone.
What you're going to do? You're going to do a Sir Clive Sinclair move.
No, do the little
Yeah.
delivery rovers, which are great fun, which are very interesting as well.
Put a seat on it
Yeah.
and sell it as a disability scooter for people with Alzheimer's can't remember where they live.
No,
And if they can stand and you can put two wheels side by side and send it as a walkway instead of a
That's not a
Segway.
bad add-on, though, is it? That is not a bad add-on for mobility scooters. Return to home. That's not a bad add-on at all.
This
Ooh.
talk's just got me.
Patent pending.
It just popped a scary thought into my head. If this robot thing takes off, one day we might have to call Mark Sir.
Yeah.
Or
He's gonna
dame.
throw-
Let's be contemporary. It could be a dame. Just depends on who
Yeah, absolutely.
identifies as.
Oh,
Right,
God.
we are definitely talking nonsense. It's definitely time to go. Unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add to this chat of nonsense.
The only thing that I saw was interesting. Your post 5 hours ago, the CAA in the UK.
Which one? Talking to Chris Crockford.
The one that was suggested there was going to be some change.
Oh yeah. 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 Well, Chris suggested that, and Chris didn't dare come on to chat tonight because he thinks he's already in enough trouble with them as it is, and he's waiting for that flying wheelchair. That's it, Johnny. Oh, Johnny, I think Johnny's in a wheelchair. What do we think of DJI goggles stowing gigabytes of data?
Yeah, but okay. Here I have a different opinion of our
Here's
friend
another hour.
Bruce and our friend Ian. Because no airline company goes out to Boeing or Airbus and asks them to retrieve the data from the black box. So what DJI is doing is aircraft aviation strategy. They have a black box which is not user accessible, and only in case of, we hope, an unexpected events will be used. I don't
incriminating
like
purposes.
it, and none of us likes it. But I think they are going the general aviation route with their black box.
Yeah, it's going to alienate a whole community from their products, unfortunately, for them.
I don't know. Come on. I don't know. I really don't know. Because their argument is going to be general aviation does it and nobody complains.
But we're not general aviation. We're not hoisting people's bums thousands of feet into the air and potentially endangering them. We're flying toys. We don't need that sort of thing. Also, what's going to happen when the USA government says they're probably spying on us, and therefore then you can't use DJI FPV gear like TikTok. They'll ban it.
Oh, come on.
Well, that's
Bruce.
that bill
You know
going
that
through.
if they wanted, they could do it. I don't think so. They have. I believe not liking it. I try to understand their motivation. They want to be more general aviation regulation compliant. I don't like it as much as you, Ian, or any one of us, but I do understand where they're coming from or where they're trying to go.
Yeah, but they're souring their own market.
Following on from that, I'd have thought, Gary, which I probably should have just messaged you about, but since you're here, I'll do it now. I thought it'd be really interesting. This came on Twitter, which I don't know whether you'd have seen or not, or if it might have been Patrick that was doing the SUS news to and fro or not. But there was a big hoo-ha on Twitter with Brendan involved about remote ID. Which came off the back actually of an incident with a drone flying that was picked up on Heathrow's counter drone system, and the police went around and told the pilot off as his standard practice. And Brendan had used that as an example of why Reed is so good, and obviously there's so many arguments on that. We won't go into that now because obviously it's a big topic in itself. But the interesting bit in that was when Brendan brought that up, I thought, oh, what equivalents are there of actually remote ID that are really in use in the real world? And there is one in marine. And in marine, it really needs worth reading about. And I think it'd be good if you could get somebody on the show that knows that space, because it is your perfect example of what is going to happen with remote ID. And the thing was, this isn't, obviously you're dealing with big shipping companies, cargo companies, far bigger than any drone companies, and they are routinely turning off the remote ID. They are routinely spoofing the GPS. So basically, they're applying hacks and hiding it, because a lot of them don't want, because of carrying valuable cargo, they don't want to know about it going A to B. And there's some people, they're fishing in waters they shouldn't be fishing in, and so there's actually so much dodginess going on that the whole system is basically, it's essentially fallen apart. It's worthless because it's so abused. But you think about it again, we're never going to have conspicuity in airspace, because you have the same thing. You have people moving stuff like footballers across countries where they shouldn't be flying across, and you've got people moving again. Cargo in planes, they shouldn't be moving. There were people shifting stuff all over the place that shouldn't be doing it. So they're never ever going to put the ADSB on. So we're always going to have that invisible items in airspace, because there's so much money involved in those kind of businesses, unfortunately.
So I was thinking the perfect thing for remote ID the other day. Today, if remote ID has to be on a drone, I think a place like America should adopt it for all assault rifles. All assault rifles should be sold with
Second Amendment. You can't mess with the Constitution, boy.
I'm not. You're not, though, are you? Because they can still buy the gun, but it's got remote ID on it.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
I know. It's tongue in cheek.
I don't know if there are any viewers from the States at the moment who hold a strong, but you've opened a can of worms there.
NRA. That's all you have to say. NRA.
So at that point, I think it's time to drop off.
Yeah, absolutely.
As the actress said to the bishop.
Right, so you're absolutely right, Craig, and Ian, you're right about AIS. It is something worth talking about. It's happening here on a weekly basis now. The Russian ships are switching off their AIS as they come into Grahamstown to pick up the weapons that we're selling them to use in Ukraine. That is happening probably daily here. They're coming in at night with the AIS off. And it must be very hard for radar to detect those boats coming and stuff like that. I mean, you could probably build an SDR-based radar to detect ships. I reckon you could, using the TV transmitters. But that's another kettle of ball games altogether. It is time to go, as Craig has correctly said. So, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, before we went on for 5 hours, the train's back. Oh, yes. And we have to finish on the train. We started on the train, we'll finish on the train. Dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, look after yourselves. If you're joining late, you're confused, you missed the important train facts. Take care. We'll see you again next week. 2100 GMT. Cheers all. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks all.